Welcome everyone to another of our Facebook Live
Hello.
webinars. Hello, Roberto.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. So I'm here today sitting across virtually from Roberto de la Mota from Mendel Wines down in Mendoza. He's coming to us live from his home in Mendoza. And his audio is perfect. His camera might be a little bit delayed, but we're so happy to hear your voice and to see you, Roberto.
Thank you very much, Lizzie. I'm really happy to be with you and with everybody in the United States from here, from Mendoza, in the very cool day in our winter, because practically today was a winter with a big frost this morning.
I know. So in Mendoza is heading into their fall winter as the temperatures are heating up here in the U.S. So we'll talk a lot about how this harvest was for you. We'll talk obviously about the wines today. And I would say that, you know, anyone who's had the honor and the pleasure of going to Mendoza and going to Mendel Winery in Luján de Cuyo and sitting across the table from Roberto, it's usually one of their longest lasting memories from their experience in Argentina. So I just am so excited, Roberto, because it's one of my favorite things. And now we get to bring this to everyone today. Anyone can have access to a Roberto tasting experience. And that's the gift of the day.
Thank you. I'm not hearing you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. But for me, it's a fantastic way not only to explain a little bit about Argentina, about me, and Mendel is the possibility to taste our wines and to comment about two wines from Mendel. Today we will taste Semillon and Cabernet Sauvignon, and that is fantastic.
Yes, so today, the whole topic and theme of today is Mendoza's past, present, and future. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about that first. And we have the opportunity to taste two amazing wines from you. We're going to taste your 2019 Mendel Semillon and your 2018 Mendel Cabernet. So anyone who's tasting along, please get those ready. And so, Roberto, the topic today, of course, is a big topic, but you are someone who, in your wine career, has touched so many really important pieces of the timeline of the evolution of Argentine wine. So I think what would be great for people to learn about is take us back to when you started making wine, especially with the influence of your dad, and take us through your experience leading up to being the head winemaker of Mendel, where you are today.
Yeah, it's a big story, not because it's so rich, because I start to be a little old, but this is the reason. But that could be interesting to comment that practically I was born in a winery because when I was very in childhood was when my family lived in Arizu Winery in Mendoza City. My father was a winemaker, and during the day, at that moment, I went at morning to the school, but at the evening, every day was walking and playing in a winery with the workers, and that's for me very natural. The world of winemaking and wineries was for me very natural, and was very interesting for me because my father had a big connection with the traditional French school, Bordeaux school in winemaking. And I knew personalities very important from the Bordeaux at home. I knew and I could share a lot of different lunches and dinners with Émile Peynaud, for example. And this is the reason because finally I went when I studied in Argentina, in Mendoza, but after that I could travel to France in the end of 80s to study in Montpellier, and that was a very nice and very good experience for me, not only in winemaking but especially in viticulture, and was really interesting. And I used to work with my father practically 9.5 years in Cabas de Weiner, Working with my father was as people who worked with fathers is, is not easy, especially with my father, because my father was at the old school education. He was born in 1918. You can imagine the people was very different, but he was extremely exigent. Not only exigent with him, uh, but it was very exigent with everybody working with him. But for me, it was very good school. And I started not as a winemaker, studied at that moment, uh, was very common, working in the lab. In my case, was very different. I started working as a worker, making wine directly, cleaning the winery, cleaning the tanks, the tunnels, and working very hard. But for me, it was extremely important. It's the best way to learn a profession, and it's a way that naturally, today, winemaker starts. But at that moment was not the case. And after that, after working with my father, I started working in the Chandon group in Moët Hennessy. Moët Hennessy, I worked and I started with a wine project called Terrazas de los Andes. I create Terrazas de los Andes in the end of 90s, in 96. And in 2001, and really it was in 1999, I started with a joint venture in between Terrazas de los Andes and Cheval Blanc called Cheval des Andes. That was a very good and very important experience for me, because I working with the Bordeaux people from Cheval Blanc. I learned a lot, especially in blending. It was a very good experience. Good friends. I continue in contact with them. And in 2003, I started with this winery, this project, my own project called Mendel, with the family from Buenos Aires. And for me, it was like a dream for a winemaker to work with a very old and very small, special old Malbec vineyard in Luján de Cuyo. And that, for me, was very, very, very interesting. And the possibility to work in the other and different way, not with the not too exigent in terms of times and volumes, but very ambitious in terms of quality. And for me, it was like a dream, and this is the reason because I accept at that moment and working with the Sielecki family, and this is the reason because we are making Mendel.
Well, I think I'm so happy that people get to hear your story from you, because your story represents two really important pieces of the evolution of Mendoza. And I think the first one is what you mentioned, that influence of Bordeaux, either winemakers or figures like Emilie Peynaud, what your father did to integrate his own wine education from Bordeaux, you kind of growing up under his wing and having that similar experience. That really affected the evolution of Mendoza as well, for both varietals as well as winemaking styles. And then the second piece is the incoming of outside projects taking interest in Mendoza, like Chandon, like Cheval Blanc, and you being firsthand in those projects, really seeing how, other areas of the world seeing Mendoza as an area to make premium wine and world-class wine, and you being the hands that are making those wines. So it's amazing that you have that first-hand experience, and Mendel is such a great way for people to see your own stamp based on those experiences. And again, so for people to be oriented, Mendel Winery is based in Luján de Cuyo, which is closer to downtown Mendoza, in the area of Mendoza. And but Mendel makes wines and has estate vineyards in Luján de Cuyo, but as well as the Uco Valley, so farther south of Luján de Cuyo. And that's where we start first with the Mendel Semillon. So before we get into the actual vineyard, Roberto, could you tell us a little bit about your work with Semillon and really just a 101 of Semillon in Mendoza in general?
Yeah, I think it's important to explain a little bit about how the viticulture and winemaking changed in the last 20 years in Mendoza, in Argentina, because we had a huge evolution, and the change was extremely important because in the 90s, when our economy had changed a lot, we received a lot of investments in not only buying new vineyards and creating new companies and new wineries, especially from Europe and from France. But in the other hand, we could introduce new technologies, not or in a vineyards, especially the drip irrigation. We started planting the new terroirs that before was impossible. But when the new system, the new drip irrigation system, we could plant it in the higher altitudes, new places. We did without the traditional irrigation, and the reservoirs help us to go in altitude with the more slopes and the possibility to plant a new material coming especially from France, new clones, new vine selections, and new varieties. And that was extremely important for Argentina in terms of viticulture, new facilities in the wineries, new machines and technology, and new material for aging. The old wines in Argentina were vinificated in the other facilities, aging in the big oak tanks, and now after 90s we started importing better and new barrels, new oak from Europe that changed a lot of our style. At the beginning, a lot of wineries started making very concentrated, very big wine with big structure, very oaky. But now, in the last 10 years, we changed the style. Speaking about the region, speaking about Argentina, looking for more typicity, more quality coming from the different terroirs, more expression coming from the places, from the vineyards, more fruits, more elegance, less oak, less concentration. I think it's wines with more fresher, and now the new style is with more fruit, less concentration, more elegance. That is the new style. And I think speaking about the future, I am really optimist because I think in the future we are working each time better in the new vineyards with working much better with better balance in the grapes, looking as we know every time more in terms of physiology in the vineyards and looking for better selections of different varieties, especially with Malbecs. Now we are looking for selection of muscle selections, Malbecs that we know exactly the wines that we can have, but in the other hand, looking for clones for different Malbecs cultivated in Argentina. And now, knowing a lot of from the terroir, soils, vineyards, vines, we have more material to make every time more better wines. I think in the future the change will continue a lot.
And when you think about the terroir landscape of Mendoza, I think that's a really important point for people to realize is that the theme of exploration not only really started in that 90s chapter and beyond, but that is still continuing today. Really understanding what the terroir potential of Mendoza is. Is that correct?
Yes, as you know, Mendoza and like all over the world, we had some influences and changing with the world warming and many different things that we are happening now. But we have one tool very important, which is to grow the possibility to grow the vineyard in altitude, looking for the new places, working much better for irrigation, new places, different slope, and different orientation. We can arrive at places that are extremely different. Mendoza and Argentina is so big and huge in possibilities. We have many places, new places to explore. This is the case of our new vineyards in Altamira, in Luco Valley, places that we can grow now that was impossible 15 or 20 years ago. And now we are exploring new places with very calcareous soils, very chalky, and we can have a new and very different Malbec that we had 15 years ago.
So I think what's so interesting is that Mendoza is kind of living two parallel stories. You know, exactly what we're talking about: the new, the exploration, seeing different terroir, working with different types of viticulture, actual varietals. But then there's also a parallel story of the old vine story of Mendoza, and working with those old vines. So tell us about your encounters and kind of discoveries of these old vines in Argentina, and specifically with Semillon, which is the first wine we'll taste. That was a discovery and a movement that you really started, Roberto.
Yeah, and as you know, it's this is a fantastic. As you say, we have two different possibilities. Very interesting. In one, have a very old Malbecs, vineyards planted in 1928. And in the very old places like Luján de Cuyo, where we have possibility to make wines with extremely intense and typical aromas from these old vines, are really special. And this year, I think I will launch a new Malbec with the Luján de Cuyo appellation. I am planning that. You are the news. You have the news now. Yeah, but I think will be. We are looking and we are working for that, because we have one so special old Malbec that is important to do it, and we will have la denominación de origen or Luján de Cuyo appellation, few bottles this year, and the first one is 2018. I have probably few bottles for United States.
Thank you, Roberto. Thank you for stowing them away. We appreciate it.
And the Semillon, as you know, arrived in Argentina at the same time than the Malbec. Arrived in the middle of 19th century, because Michel Pouget, who was the man coming, the professor Pouget, arrived from Bordeaux region, and he arrived with the vineyards. He created the first winemaking and viticulture school in Mendoza, in Argentina, and he imports varieties from his region, who was Bordeaux, and obviously Malbec, which was the most important variety in the right bank in Bordeaux at that moment, was more than 60% of the Saint-Emilion and Pomerol region was planted with the Malbec at that moment, in the middle of 19th century, and other white variety, which was the Semillon. The reason is, when the Malbec was the red variety in Mendoza, the Semillon was the white variety, especially important at the beginning of 20th century. But at that moment was vinificated with some big structure, concentrated, some aging, a little oxidized. Was a wine not really interesting at that moment. When we started to export to different countries, especially to the United States, the Semillon was a little abandoned, and people was working or looking for varieties that could export to United States, and they planted a lot of Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. And the Semillon was a little abandoned, and they used the Semillon for base wines, for second-class sparkling wines. But I vinified Semillon with my father in the 80s, and the result was fantastic. We had a very good vineyard planted with Semillon in Altamira, one block just in front of our Finca Remota Malbec, the old Malbec. We had a block, Semillon. And in 2009, I decided to vinificate this Semillon to create the wine that we will taste today. At that moment, I vinificated with a very classical way. I pressed the Entil cluster in the pneumatic press. We had a very small pneumatic press, and the juice I fermented 85% in a stainless steel tank and 15% in the new oak, in the new French oak barrels. And the result was very fresh, very intense Semillon with the classical white flowers in the nose, acacia notes with some dry fruits, good acidity, very good freshness, very elegant wine with the wine that aged extremely well in bottle. We tasted last year in Buenos Aires with some customers, vertical from 2009 until 2018, and was extremely interesting to see the difference in the different vintages, and the customer from the winery could realize where was the vintages with the fresh condition and the warmer condition, directly tasting the wines. And for me, it was very important, the demonstration that the wine express each vintage very, very, very well. And I think it's a reason because this is a wine that aged well in bottle and 10 years or 15 years without problems.
Well, I want to take the opportunity then to say that we're tasting the 2019, so we are celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the wine.
Exactly.
The first vintage. So Roberto, next time you're doing a vertical of Mendel Semillon, I will get on a plane and I will come to Argentina to do that because I want people to know that when you find Mendel Semillon, buy some bottles to drink and enjoy today, but to cellar and age these wines is a complete gift that you will thank yourself for later. And I also want to say that because you were the first to really bottle a Semillon, a labeled Semillon in the Modern chapter in 2009, Mendel Semillon was the gateway for other winemakers to realize the potential of Semillon as a single varietal wine, especially as a wine of alta gamma, a premium wine.
Yeah.
And so when I started
making the Semillon, we started and we were practically alone. We had we were only 3 wineries making Semillon in the market, in the whole Argentinian market. But now you can have 10 or 15 different Semillons in the market, and for me that is very, very good, because it's at the beginning we can preserve the old and the very interesting vineyards with this variety, which was very classical in Argentina. And on the other hand is the way that express different varieties very with a lot of typicity from our terroir.
So let's dive into the glass so people can understand really more of the flavor profile here. When you're talking about Semillon, I mean, from a wine drinker's perspective, I always love people to taste Semillon, especially if they've never tried the grape before, especially if they like varietals like Sauvignon Blanc or Albarino or Riesling, wines that have great acidity. But with
Yeah.
Semillon, what I love about it is its texture as well, and that floral aromatic that it has. So tell me, from your perspective, there are a lot of different notes you can get with Semillon. What to you is the most that jumps out in the 2019 vintage for the characteristics of the
I
Semillon?
think it's the most interesting thing is the first olfaction. You feel the freshness and the flowers note, white flowers, the acacia flower too, with some fruits, a little tropical fruits, and peaches, apricots. That's very interesting. But with the little evolution, you will see some others aromas will appear, and some amounts. And I think it's very interesting because some nuts will appear, and that is very interesting. It's very typical with the Semillon. Same as this wine was practically 20% fermented and aging in new French oak barrels. There are no perception coming from the oak. It's very difficult to find the oak because I'm not interested. I'm using very thin grain without toasty notes. The oak is only the recipe to maintain the yeast and some lees in a barrel, giving to the wine a little more structure, some fat notes, more bigger structure in the mouth, but no more than that. Another very interesting thing in this wine is acidity. It's a wine with the very high acidity, very fresh. And the explanation for that is because this vineyard is at practically 3,900 feet altitude. It's very high, and at the altitude give to the wine the conditions to have this freshness, this acidity, and that's very, very important. This acidity help us to preserve the wine and to have a very good aging potential.
I think that for anyone who likes higher toned, acid, very fresh wines, you will absolutely fall in love with Mendel Semillon, as everyone does. But I want to emphasize too that there is such an elegance in the structure of the wine, Roberto, that it completely supports that high acidity creates an incredibly long finish, but the texture of the wine is so beautiful and rounds that out really, really nicely. It's beautifully made. And I want to point out too that this is coming from a vineyard area that you said, the Paraje Altamira, which you recognize the quality of these vines and this type of soil and vineyard area, which then evolved to become the first DO or IG, Indicación Geográfica, in Argentina, all based upon the quality of wines that come from that specific soil type and area. So you saw it before everyone else did. You recognize that quality.
Yeah, I think it's important, and as you say, the terroir is important. The soil with a lot, very chalky, and with the calcare is very important because give to the wine some savor. It's a little salty and giving more flavors, and I think it's very interesting. Another interesting thing is only to play to laugh a little bit. Is we have a new competitor. Because now Chateau d'Yquem is making still wine, dry wine, a Semillon.
No.
And I'm just joking with Pierre Lurton because he's a friend, and I say, Pierre, you are a competitor now with the Semillon because they are making not only the traditional Chateau d'Yquem, they are making Y, which is a dry wine, is a still wine with Semillon.
Wow. Well,
yeah.
I'd like to see them go head to head because they will have a tough chance against Mendel Semillon. I'll tell them that.
Yeah.
I will tell them that. That is so great, Roberto. Well, I just adore Mendel Semillon. I think when people think Semillon, they from Argentina, they think Mendel, and we all thank you for bringing Semillon back to the picture for Argentina. It is a tremendous wine, and not only just white wine, but one of the most tremendous wines of the region. So we thank you for that.
Okay.
I'd love to transition to Cabernet, because Cabernet is also a really important part of Argentina's story that many people don't know. I think, you know, it's interesting. We're doing a tasting for Argentina today, and we're not tasting Malbec. We're tasting Semillon, and we're tasting Cabernet Sauvignon. So tell us what your experience has been with the evolution of Cabernet in the landscape of Mendoza.
Oh, Cabernet is as everywhere. The Cabernet Sauvignon probably is one of the most cosmopolitan varieties in all over the world. In Argentina, it arrived in the 19th century too, and was important, less than Malbec, but we had a Cabernet Sauvignon every time. Just until 90s, the Cabernet Sauvignon was more important in terms of quality and price. Wineries paid more for cabs than Malbec because it was more rare. And in our case, we have our Cabernet Sauvignon in another vineyard in Luján de Cuyo, in one place called Pedriel. Pedriel is one of the highest places in Luján de Cuyo, in the left bank of Mendoza River. It's a very stony soil, very dry soil with a very good drainage. The cabs suffer a little bit because the soil is very dry, but we have very good concentration, very good intensity. The cabs with good elegance, I like a lot. In our case, this vineyard is very different than our Malbec vineyard because this is a French clone. It's a 337 clone planted with the rootstock. This is a vineyard planted in 1994, and it's for me. I like a lot this clone in this place in Pedriel, because in this very stony soil at the same altitude as the Semillon, but 100 kilometers northern in Pedriel, we have a little warmer region than the Altamira, but it's a very good place for cabs. It's a place that the yield is not very important. It's a little, the vineyards with lower yield because the soil is very poor, but the grapes are very concentrated with the good intensity and good freshness. In this case, this cab is typically a Cabernet Sauvignon with a lot of intensity in aromas, with a lot of very spicy notes, typical pepper, but the rose pepper is typical from here, and with fruits, red fruits, some red fruits and black fruit, but especially spicy. And this is a wine vinificated in a very classical way. This is a wine that will put the grapes in the small tanks, 50 to 80 hectoliters, pushing down the cap by hand with pillage. Typical maceration with 21 days maceration to have good extraction, but very delicate, very soft extraction, to have good wines with a lot of color, structure, good tannins, but very soft. And aging in oak with the barrels, French oak, but aging 1/3 in new barrels, 1/3 in second use barrels, and 1/3 in one use barrels. It's very classical aging, but when you taste the wine in aromas, it's very difficult to find the oak because grapes were very concentrated with a lot of fruits. I like this kind of reason because give us cabs with good acidity, good freshness, and it's a wine that, as our Malbec, aged extremely well in bottle. Now we are tasting the new vintage in the market. It's 2018, but we started as the Semillon at the same time in 2009, and with 10 years, the wine is extremely fresh. We have the conditions to have wines that age extremely well. And now we are planting the Cabernet Sauvignon in Altamira too. It's not in a bottle year yet, but in the future we will use in Mendel wines, because I am really happy with the new vineyards in Altamira.
But did you take cuttings from your Perdriel vineyard for Altamira, or are they different clones or different plants that you planted?
We use different clones. We use the same 337. We use 338 and another French clone 179. But in Altamira, the wine is very different, with more color, more concentration, more structure, probably bigger wines, but not so elegant than this one. And I prefer this elegance that we have now.
So
we will see in the future.
Yeah, that's a really important point that I love telling people about for Mendoza, because many people think, oh, wines from Mendoza are wines from Mendoza. It's just kind of one region. But when you plant the same varietal in a place like Luján de Cuyo versus the Uco Valley, the differences of soil, type of irrigation, temperature, type of, age of the vine, all of that really affects the style of wine in your glass. So you nailed it in explaining that, Cabernet from Luján de Cuyo is very different personality than Cabernet from Altamira or the Uco Valley in general.
Probably in Cabernet Sauvignon, there are less differences than the Malbec.
Mm.
The Malbec from Luján de Cuyo is, in aromas, is typical with red fruits, with plums, with black cherries, and very sweet and round tannins. From Uco Valley, the Malbecs are with more flower notes, violet notes, fresher, with more spicy notes, more color, more concentrated, big tannins, less ripeness in terms of tannins. And there are more differences in Malbecs than Cabs, but in the Cabernet Sauvignon, you can find differences in between the places, of course, because soils are different, climates are a little different, and I prefer just at the moment our vineyard from Perdriel, because we can have this kind of Cabs with a lot of spicy note, but very fresh, red fruit, very ripe, but very elegant and very soft tannins. Wines with structure, but especially elegant. And I think it's the way that I like a lot the Cabs.
So whenever I'm tasting with people, Roberto, and I'm tasting Mendel wines, or I'm trying to recommend a wine from our world from Argentina, the words that I use to describe your red wines are elegant and polished. You just have such an amazing touch with your winemaking that you can take the beauty and the natural balance that the fruit has and apply a very classic winemaking, Bordeaux touch, if you will, and make this just very polished, elegant wines that when people come up to me and they say, I really love Bordeaux style wines, I bring them to Mendel, because I know that their style of wines they're going to find in your bottles. So I think it also touches your background too, of having that sort of Bordeaux influence early on. You can see that, but you're playing in your Mendoza field, and it creates really Grand Cru wines, first growth wines, but from Mendoza. And to toot your own horn, Roberto, both the 2019 Semillon and the 2018 Cab got tremendous scores. I mean, the scores from Mendel for these vintages are 94 plus across multiple publications, from Wine Advocate to James Suckling to Tim Atkin. So I applaud you for all of that. That's a huge accomplishment to you, and I'm so happy because they are rightfully scored in that way.
Thank you so much, Lizzie, and thank you so much for your comments. But I know I think when we make wines, that is not in my case, is for, I think it's for every winemaker. We are making wine that we like to drink, and finally we are making wines that we love. And I like this kind of wine that are intense, but in the other hand, it's a wine that you can have pleasure to drink. And I think it's for our culture. We are normally we are drinking wines with food, and normally I think we are making wines uh, to take to taste, to take a glass, but especially to to take with food. To And this is a wine that you drink a lot, because it's a. I think it's my dream as a winemaker. I say every time is when I go to the restaurant and I see a couple in a table and they finish one bottle of my wine in a dinner. I think this okay. This is a people don't need to speak about wine, need to drink it. I think
Yeah,
it's the most
amen.
important thing. Yeah.
Amen. Well, I can attest that I've drank a lot of bottles of Mendel wines in my life, so I am part of that team.
Thank you.
Roberto, I would love to finish up here just with what are your thoughts on the next 5 to 10 years of Mendoza and the wine world there? What are you the most excited about for the evolution of Mendoza into the future?
I think the evolution will be looking for new terroir, new places, exploring for the new terroir. In the other hand, looking and working a lot in the vine selection and variety selections, looking for the muscle and clonal selection for more quality, more typicity, different, looking for more intensity in aromas, more complexity in the mouth. And I think that will be the way working in vineyards. We are working a lot in terms of irrigation to have every time better balance, economizing water because it's important in our climates. But on the other hand, looking for better balance in the grapes, and that is very important. Working with having good yield, but at the other hand, good intensity, good concentration, probably more intensity, more color, less alcohol. That's working a lot in a vineyard with different balances. In terms of winemaking, trying to express not only the variety, is trying to express the richness coming from the terroir, to express every terroir in every vineyard. And that will be the next step, I think, is working a lot in one place and trying to express in our wines all the richness coming from this different terroir. And I think that will be our most important challenge in the future. Probably working with new varieties, why not? That is another to explore a little bit. And finally, working with blends, not only with for reds wines, looking for blends with not only the traditional varieties, probably looking for different blends and blends in whites. That will be probably very interesting.
Well, Roberto, you have literally been the boots on the ground to do all of that work that you're talking about. And we thank you for bringing these bottles to our tables and for leading the way of these really important movements within Mendoza's past, present, and future. And there's been a lot of your biggest fans on the Facebook chat today. So thank you all for joining us and raising a glass to the Wines from Mendoza and the Wines from Mendel. Roberto, it is always such a pleasure. Thank you for your time today. I raise my glass to you. Santé, salud, cheers.
Cheers, salud, santé. Thank you so much, Alicia, and cheers for everybody.
Of course, and as you know, people have been asking, where do we find Mendel? Please reach out to us at Vine Connections. we will show you where to get these gems. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you soon. Abrazo. Ciao, Roberto.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.